Hi, boys and girls, on to chapter 30. Eric took off his helmet and shook himself like a dog after a swim. That's better, he said, and he looked around. But where am I, and what happened? A pair of eyeglasses with yellow lenses slid off his nose, and he looked at them in bemusement. These aren't mine. He glanced at Cosmos, but Cosmos' screen was blank, and black smoke drifted from the keyboard. Annie rushed forward and hugged him. Dad, she squealed, you fell into a black hole and George had to rescue you. He was so smart, Dad. He found out from the notes you left him that he could escape from the black hole. But first he had to find Cosmos, and Cosmos was stolen by a horrible man. Slow down, Annie, slow down, said Eric, who seemed rather dazed. You mean I've been inside a black hole and come back? But that's incredible. It means I've got it right. It means that all the work I've done on black holes is correct. Information that goes into black hole is not lost forever. Now that I know, it's amazing. Now, if I can come out of... Eric, said Susan sharply. Eric jumped. Oh, Susan, he said, looking rather sheepish and embarrassed. He handed over the yellow glasses. I don't suppose, he said apologetically, you have a pair of my glasses with you. I seem to have come out of the black hole wearing somebody else's. These two have been running around all over town trying to save you, said Susan, digging into her bag, pulling out a pair of Eric's usual glasses. They've cut school, and George is missing the science competition he went to enter, all for your sake. I think the least you could do is say thank you, especially to George. He figured it out all by himself, you know, about Graham and the black hole and everything else. Don't lose this pair. Thank you, Annie, said Eric, patting his daughter gently and putting his glasses onto his nose at their familiar crooked angle. And thank you, George. You've been very brave and smart. That's all right, George stared at his feet. It wasn't me, really. It was Cosmos. No, it wasn't, said Eric. Cosmos couldn't have gotten me back without you. Otherwise, I would have been here already. Wouldn't I? I suppose so, said George. Is Cosmos all right? The great computer was silent and black screened. Eric untangled himself from Annie and went over to Cosmos. Poor old thing, he said, unplugging the computer, folding him up and tucking him back under his arm. I expect he needs a bit of rest. Now I better get home right away and write up my new discoveries. I must let all the other scientists know immediately that I've made the most astonishing... Susan coughed and stared at him. Eric looked at her, puzzled. What? He mouthed. George, she mouthed. Oh, of course, said Eric. He turned to George. I'm so sorry. What I meant to say was that first of all, I think we should get you back to your school and see if you still have time to enter the science competition. Is that right? He asked a student, who nodded and smiled. But I'm not sure, said George. We can go through your presentation in the car. He started clanking towards the door in his spacesuit. Let's get moving. He looked around to find that no one was following him. What now? Dad, said Annie, you're not going to George's school dressed like that. I don't think anyone will notice, but if you insist. He peeled off his spacesuit to reveal his ordinary, everyday clothes below, then ruffled his hair. And anyway, where are we? I don't recognize this place. This, Eric, said Susan, is Graham Reaper's house. Graham wrote you that note to send you into space, and while you were there, he stole Cosmos, thinking this would mean you could never come back. No, Eric said. Graham did it on purpose? He stole Cosmos? I told you he'd never forgive you. Oh, dear, said Eric sadly, struggling to pull off his spacesuit. That is very unhappy news. Eric, said George, what did happen with you and Creeper? I mean, why did he want you to be eaten by a black hole, and why won't he ever forgive you? Oh, George, said Eric, shaking off the spacesuit, it's a long story. You know, Graham and I used to work together. He reached inside the jacket pocket for his wallet. From it, he took out a crumpled old photo and handed it to George. In the picture, George saw two young men. Standing between them was an older man wearing a long white beard. Both the young men were wearing black gowns with white fur-lined hoods, and all three of them were laughing at the camera. The man on the right had thick dark hair and heavy framed glasses that even looked like they were sitting at a strange angle. But that's you, said George, pointing at the man. He examined the face of the other young man. It was strangely familiar. And that looks like Creeper. But he looks really nice and friendly, not scary and weird like he is now. Graham, said Eric quietly, was my best friend. We studied physics together at the university, the one here in town. The man you see in the middle was our tutor. He was brilliant. He invented the concept of cosmos, and Graham and I worked together on the early prototypes. We wanted to make a machine that would help us explore outer space, and we could extend our knowledge of the universe. At the beginning, Graham and I got along very well, Eric continued, looking into the distance. But after a while, he became strange and cold. I started to realize he wanted Cosmos for himself. He didn't want to go on the quest for knowledge to benefit humanity. He wanted to use Cosmos to make himself rich and powerful by exploiting the wonders of space for his own good. You have to understand, he added, that in those days, Cosmos was very different. Back then, he was a gigantic computer, so big he took up a whole basement, and yet he wasn't even half as powerful as he is now. Anyway, one evening when Graham thought he was alone, I caught him. He was trying to use Cosmos for his own terrible plans, and I was there. I tried to stop him, and it was dreadful. Everything had to change after that." Eric fell silent. "What, after the terrible thing happened?" asked Annie. Susan nodded. "Yes, honey. Don't ask your father any more questions about it. That's enough for now."